Hey guys, Mrs. Shelton.
Mr. Rancor.
We are here with another exciting activity for you this week. This week, we'd like you to go ahead and open your lab manual and turn to page 42 in the digital lab manual and find the introduction to activity 6, Mendel, the first geneticist. We're going to begin by reading the introduction together, discussing the guiding question, followed by the procedure, and then follow along as Mr. Rancor and I read aloud the text to you. The study of genes, called genetics, began with an Austrian monk named Gregor Mendel, who studied the genetics of pea plants in the 1860s. Based on the results of his experiments, Mendel proposed a model for how organisms inherit traits from their parents. He discovered the behavior of genes 40 years before scientists learned where genes are located in the cell, and almost 100 years before scientists discovered what genes are made of. In this activity, you will investigate some of Mendel's results and how he analyzed his results to come up with an explanation for the inheritance of traits. You will also compare Mendel's model with your own model in the gene combo activity. So ultimately, at the end of this activity, we'd like you to be able to answer the following guiding question. What causes the patterns that can be observed when two parents with different traits have offspring? In this activity, you are going to be reading about Mendel. You're going to be learning about the results of his experiments. And as you do so, you are going to be answering stopping to think questions. These stopping to think questions can be found at the top of your Activity 6 analysis document. Those can be found in your DNA Diner. So at this time, go ahead and pause the video, find this document, open it up, and begin preparing to read or to complete the stopping to think questions as Mr. Rancor and I instruct you to do so throughout the course of this reading. Hit it, Dan.
All right. So, part A, Gregor Mendel.
Gregor Mendel.
Okay, I got to make sure I say this right. All right. In 1865, Gregor Mendel published his work on the behavior of genes. Mendel lived in a monastery that was devoted to teaching and science as well as religious matters. Mendel had prepared to be a science teacher and had studied math, botany, and plant breeding for several years. The monastery had an experimental garden for agricultural research. Research then, as now, included crossbreeding varieties of plants and animals in order to produce superior food and other products. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to switch to the next page. Mendel became increasingly interested in pea plants he was working on. He wondered how the colors, shapes, and heights of offspring pea plants were related to those of the parent plants. He began a careful study of how characteristics are inherited in pea plants. Mendel's discoveries depended upon research about breeding plants, careful experiments, and thinking about how to explain the evidence he collected. He understood that plant seeds are produced by sexual reproduction. He also understood the mathematics of probability. Mendel deliberately crossed specific parent plants to produce and study the traits of the offspring. His experiments were planned so carefully and recorded so thoroughly that anyone could repeat his procedure and confirm his findings. The patterns he discovered applied to all sexually reproducing organisms, from petunias to peas, from earthworms to humans. His discoveries have helped people answer questions ranging from how to produce disease-resistant food crops, to explaining human diseases such as cystic fibrosis and sickle cell disease. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to answer stopping to think question 1 located on page 43, or listen to the question carefully. Stopping to think question 1 wants to know, what personal qualities and experiences do you think help Mendel in his work? Pause the video right now. Answer stopping to think question 1 right here.
Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to move on to part B. You should have already answered stopping to think question number 1. Part B, Mendel's experiments with pea plants. Plants in general, and pea plants in particular. When we're talking pea plants, think like those green peas, that vegetable that Mrs. Shelton does not like to eat. Plants in general and pea plants in particular were excellent organisms for Mendel to study for the following reasons, and there are three. First, they grow into mature plants very quickly. In about 60 to 80 days, their seeds grow and develop into mature plants. Two, they produce many seeds rapidly, or offspring. The seeds are just the offspring. Three, they have many observable characteristics that come in just two alternatives, such as purple or white flowers, yellow or green pods with no blending of these traits, no lavender flowers, no yellowish green pods. Take a look at the table at the top of the next page. This table indicates Mendel's results. So what you're looking at here are three generations of offspring of pea plants. You're looking at their flower color, what was crossed, okay? You're looking at their seed color, their seed surface, as well as their pod color. Notice that information is given for all three generations of the pea plants for these four traits. Okay, moving on. Mendel decided to breed extremely large numbers of pea plants and search for simple patterns in the offspring. This table above shows the results he obtained for four of the characteristics he studied. Mendel did hundreds of crosses and observed and counted the offspring's traits for thousands of pea seeds, pods, and flowers. He then analyzed all these results and applied his knowledge of statistics and probability to infer the behavior of individual genes. At this time, we want you to stop and respond to stopping to think question number 2. Please notice that there are two parts to this question, and you are responsible for answering both parts. Again, you will record your responses to this on your analysis document underneath stopping to think number 2. So, part A asks this. What were the advantages for Mendel in using pea plants for his breeding experiments? And part B, why did Mendel perform so many crosses for the same characteristics? Take it away, Mr. Rancourt.
Okay, reading on. So you just should have answered stopping to think question 2, and you've hit unpause on this video. As he looked at the data, Mendel noticed an interesting pattern. If he calculated the ratio of two traits in the third generation, he obtained a ratio of very near to 3-to-1.
Oh my!
We've learned about that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, for seed color, the ratio of yellow to green seeds can be calculated as, so he took 6,022 yellow seeds and divided by 2,001 green seeds, and he got a ratio of about 3.01 or 3 yellow seeds for every 1 green seed that was produced. Reading on, this is almost exactly a 3-to-1 ratio of yellow to green, like I just said. This means that for every 1 green-seeded plant, there were almost exactly 3 yellow-seeded plants in the third generation, and you can see that with the graph right here. You can also express this in terms of fractions. 3/4 were yellow, 1/4 were green, as shown in the pie graph at the right.
Where have you seen these exact same ratios before?
All right, moving on to the next page. I'm going to scroll up, page 45, enter, and here we go. So Mendel concluded that not only did the green-seeded trait reappear in the third generation, but the probability of the third generation plant having that trait was 1/4. That is about 1 green-seeded plant for every 4 plants produced overall. He found the same ratio with several other characteristics. The 3-to-1 ratio he found for all of these different characteristics was the clue to how the parents' genes combine with their offspring or in their offspring. Based on his analysis, he proposed the following. First thing, each trait that appears in the second generation is the dominant version of the characteristic. The trait that is hidden is called the recessive trait. Point number 2, every plant has 2 copies of the gene for each characteristic. So all this stuff right now that I'm about ready to read and have just read should sound very familiar because we've been telling you from day one. Okay? This is the guy who created all this and found all this out. So these two copies are called alleles. The evidence suggests that there was more than one copy of the gene for each characteristic in each plant. I wonder where you've heard that before. So the simplest assumption that would work was to have two alleles or copies per characteristic. So if you're sitting here going, duh, I already know all this. Yeah, we know that. It's because we're now telling you who came up with all these rules. It was Gregor Mendel. Last point. Each pea plant receives only one allele from each characteristic from each parent. Again, you should be like, I've already heard this. And ends up with two alleles of its own. He then used these ideas to argue that the 3-to-1 ratio is exactly what is expected in the third generation for every plant characteristic. In earlier activities, you explored this proposal using discs and coins as models for genes, like we did with Sky and Poppy and Ocean and Lucy. So now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go into that same document, this document right here, and you're going to answer stopping to think question 3. If you notice, there's 2 questions again, so there needs to be 2 answers. Stopping to think question 3A says this: explain how the model using coin tosses in the activity gene combo compares with Mendel's explanations for his results with pea plants. So you should notice they have some things in common. We want you to tell us what they have in common. Okay? Stopping to think question 3B says this: people often think of mathematics as important in physics and chemistry, but it is also important in many fields of life science, like biology. Explain how Mendel used mathematics in his work. I would be looking for some tables or some pie graphs or some calculations in there, and that should help you answer that question more thoroughly.
Absolutely, Mr. Rancourt. Reading on. Mendel published his results in a paper that was mostly ignored at the time. Can you imagine? Scientists and breeders failed to understand what he had done. Never before had someone used mathematics to tackle a complex biological problem. Mendel's work was rediscovered and understood only after scientists realized that genes must be located on the chromosome found in the nucleus of the cell. You will learn about chromosomes in the activity titled Show Me the Genes. But for now, all we're going to ask you to do is to navigate back to that document that you've been recording your stopping to think questions on and find the activity 6 analysis questions. You will notice that there are a total of 5 questions for this particular activity. You are responsible for answering questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 on this document. But remember, question number 5 will be found on the scoring guide. So you simply need to record your answer there for question number 5. Please remember to look back through the information that is found in the reading if you are having any questions as you are answering each part of your analysis. Remember that Mr. Rancourt and I are here for you. All you have to do is ask if you are in need of assistance. Hope you guys have a great day and enjoyed learning about the father of modern genetics, Gregor Mendel.